Welcome, folks. Episode 1. Got a couple of guests here. We'll introduce them here shortly. My staff are in the room too, and super excited to launch my podcast. I've been working on it for a while, and like I'm going to reference people like Dan Bongino and Tim Pool a lot. So big fans of them and their work, and it's time for another podcast with veterans and that sort of thing from an angle of what we've seen and what we know, and how we're going to be a part of good things moving forwards with our country and with our God and with the world. And so, yeah, just want to let you know. I am self-sponsoring. So before we get to my clients, I am the owner of multiple companies, but one of them is the Fulfilled Veteran Project. And I help deliver, I'm the veteran money strategist. So I help deliver not only VA money to my clients, but every veteran out there is worth about $3, $4, possibly even $5 million in your lifetime. So if you're a veteran or know veterans, which everybody does, let them know about me. It's not just about VA money. There's other money, state level money for their kids in college and property taxes, all kinds of stuff that they don't know about. So I've never briefed a human who knows everything and is receiving what I help deliver. And it's their money, by the way, too, which we'll get deeper in. So thefulfilledveteranproject.com. You'll see that in my website, flashed in here a couple different times. But yeah, we're doing great stuff. Been doing it I'm in my 5th year doing this, delivered over $9 billion to my clients. Robert and his brother are clients of mine. Just received their 100% here recently. And that's just a benchmark, a lot of money in their pocket. Dylan, he was one of my clients from several years ago, and he has helped deliver with me to a nonprofit that's out there over $160 million. And if every veteran is worth $3 million, that's lowballing it. We helped 50 people just to start out with, and that adds up to over $160 million that we shared. So I'm the best in the world at what I do. So you'll see. All right, gang, let's get to it. So like Tim Pool says, to talk about this and so much more, let me introduce you to my guests, and I'll have them introduce themselves. We'll start off with Robert. So if you can, let us know who you are, where you came from, just a quick story of 1 or 2 minutes. We'll get deeper. We're doing a long form, so we'll get to know each other a lot better. But very short of how old you are, what you did, how long you did it, and then we'll take it from there. And let me unmute you here real quick. Give me a second. There we go.
Thanks so much, Albert. It's great to be here with you and everybody. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to yourself and fellow veterans. My name is Rob Fagan. I am 59, about to turn 60 sometime this year, and I spent almost 30 years in the United States Army. I retired just a couple months early so I could get my kids into high school on time. And for the majority of my career, I was a foreign area officer. We can talk more about what that is later. Not everybody knows exactly what that is. But previous to that, I was an intelligence officer and served with any number of different types of units in the Army, to include special forces, military police, and artillery.
And you said you're an officer. What was your commission?
I commissioned through ROTC, the Southern Illinois University ROTC department there at a small state college.
Nice. Very cool. I'm a ROTC kid too. Dylan, tell us about yourself.
All right. I'm Dylan Mulford. Albert knows that. I work for him. I guess I should start with my age. I'm 32 years old. I spent a little over 6 years in the Air Force. I was aerospace ground equipment, so I worked the flight line a lot for the B-52s. Now I work for the FAA full time. I'm a air raid transportation system specialist. I can't talk today. Damn.
That's right. We'll ease into it.
Yeah. But yeah, I work for Albert. I'm the engagement manager for him. Basically, all the stupid shit you see out on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the social media, that's me. Got to have a veteran out there to, versus other veterans, I guess.
Yeah, understands the dumb stuff.
I'm happy to be here.
Good stuff. And by the way, we are mostly on Rumble. That's our main site. So we're going to push this out on YouTube as well, but I don't think we're going to last long on YouTube. I'm sure we'll get strikes on that because we're going to cuss a lot. So It's called What the Fuck VA, so it's already in the title. So, like I was telling these guys too, and anybody that I'm chatting about, the baseline, the base foundation of this is it is what the fuck VA. That there's all kinds of stories of if the government wanted to help, they would. It's that simple. If this limitless billions of dollars or trillions of dollars to so-called help veterans, but they're not doing it. And I don't want to talk too deeply about like conspiracies and aliens and all of that kind of shit, but I will talk reality of what I know. I've got over 3,000 clients, and I mean, we could start off by talking about the pay scale, pay chart for veterans, and why veterans. I've got over 3,000 clients, most of them being special operators and other high caliber people. So every day I'm talking to SEALs and Rangers and MARSOC and 160th. Now they're in other things like airline pilots that are out there. All the Apache folks in Qatar, those guys are mine. Hi, welcome. The folks down in Costa Rica doing drug interdiction, air crews, ground crews down there, those folks are mine. If I didn't already mention, SEAL teams, Air Force One, Air Force Two, FBI, CIA, DEA, I could keep going, but the world's best and deadliest come to me. And I've heard their stories, and not only heard their stories, but also obviously have my own, and Rob has his own, Dylan has his own to share. So if we're even just to start the conversation off with, let's say, helpful versus harmful, if the government wanted to help, they've got the capacity to help. What are they not helping with, and what do you think the reason is for that? I know Dylan's over there messing with his camera, so I'm going to turn it to Rob. What are your thoughts?
The question being, what are they not helping with, or what is the
like why, if the government really wanted to help, if the VA wanted to help, wouldn't they? Like that's a Dan Bongino line. Like if they wanted to, they would.
Sure. I'll go back, Albert. Lots and lots of veteran stories. I really only know, my own and partial of my brothers and maybe a few other people. I'll just share my personal story is, as I was leaving the military, first of all, as a foreign area officer, you get assigned primarily to embassies and other locations around the world because we're tasked to be liaison and security cooperation assistance type people, folks who arrange training and equipment sales and things with other armies. So by definition, you're working overseas almost all the time. So I was in and out of lots of different embassies, and my personal story working with the VA started in my last assignment when, the Army conveniently said, hey, we usually give people like you 12 months to retire. You come back to the States and you get a nominal job of some type in the Pentagon, so you're allowed to retire. Well, they moved that cheese or pulled that rug out from me and said, hey, congratulations, you're going to retire from overseas, which is not impossible, but it is a lot more difficult to get all these things done. And as you're within that 8-9 month window of retiring, all of a sudden you go from a very valued individual in a fairly high level of responsibility type position. And quite frankly, you start getting treated like crap the closer you get to retirement. And I don't mind saying that because, it's just true. You're in a joint duty billet with an interagency, type background. And then all of a sudden, nobody owns you. I was working for the Defense Intelligence Agency. And as I was starting to retire, they said, well, you need to talk to the Army because they're in charge of retirement. And then as I'm talking to the Army, they say, oh, well, you're in a joint duty billet. You need to talk to the Defense Intelligence Agency. So all of a sudden, you're this broken toy or, expired potato that nobody wants to deal with. And so I had to come back to the States on a couple of different occasions and get my medical clearance and my exams and all those kinds of things done that people do fairly easily when they're in the States. But when you're overseas, nobody wants to pay for the plane ticket or make the arrangements. So, this all started in that type of way. And I did my exams and I did all these things and I went to my briefings, and, we can talk a lot more about that too, the transition briefings and the qualities and content of what they're actually giving veterans who are transitioning. It's a whole nother kind of discussion, but which I'm happy to have because I have a lot of thoughts on it. But as I did my medical stuff, you follow rules and regulations and you do what they tell you to do. And I did all that. And I talked to various veteran service organizations. They're all great. You know, I love these guys, American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, AMVETS, they're all great, but they're also free and they're volunteers. And so with that, you know, comes not necessarily lack of professionalism, but sometimes a lack of quality in dealing with your things. And quite frankly, you don't know when you're a transitioning veteran what is supposed to be being done for you anyway. And so I had my medical stuff, and, you know, long story short, the VA did their assessments and all these things. And they're like, hey, you know, congratulations, you are 40% disabled. And I'm like, well, okay, let me see what that means. You know, I've actually got a few things that bother me. What does 40% mean? Because you really can't even put that on a scale when you're a transitioning veteran. And long story short, what I feel is done to lots and lots of people like me who, you know, thank goodness I don't have catastrophic injuries. I don't have things that some of my brother and sister veterans do. So I feel very blessed in that regard. However, when you dangle this 40% thing, it's not, I don't feel it's a real assessment. It's above 30. So you are quote unquote getting something, right? You're getting a little bit of tax-free money at the end of the month. But although when it's under 50, it comes out of your pension. So it's not real money. It's fake money because it's some of your money being transitioned into tax-free money. You get a bump on, you know, government hiring because you're at 40%, but you're not 50%, where real benefits start to actually kick in. So it is my assessment that the VA, the United States government, and others have come to some kind of money-saving tactic to where they dangle 40% and hope that veterans say, you know what, that's good enough. I don't really have bad injuries. I don't have any catastrophic type things going on with me. And I'll just settle for that because I get a little money and I get a job bump on federal hiring. I'm okay. And I feel that's a huge disservice and isn't really the analysis of someone's actual physical well-being or what it is that's going on with them, to just kind of tack on 40% and say, you know, that's good enough. We're all good here. Move on to the next person. I'll leave it at that. Over.
Yeah. And feel free to, I would say, even be, now, again, you know your history. I know my 3,000 plus clients and tens of thousands of veterans that I've briefed. So let me be even more frank with what Robert's saying. Let me translate some real terminology. So Rob said benefits. To me, benefit means money. And I'm talking crazy level of money. So I just want to be clear with that. So when we say benefits, we mean money. Because there's two outcomes for, let's say, a veteran. There's going to be healthcare and there's money. So it could be a claim, could be life insurance for the family or whatever. We're going to talk about the whole gamut of that. Healthcare is one thing. And that's what kind of stinks about the VA too, is that they've got like two silos of, well, in one town, you've got a VA hospital, which is healthcare. Then you've got money, they call it like the VBA, the veteran business, blah, blah, blah. So the money side, and they don't talk to each other. They don't talk to each other rarely, amazingly rarely. And even if they do talk to each other, it doesn't really do what's right for the veteran. So that's why I call my company the Fulfilled Veteran Project, not the half-assed project, because we'll talk about the corruption in the VA here shortly, starting with the pay chart. And by the way, so I've got 2 master's degrees. Nobody gives a shit about that. But I was in law school for a time. And when I was in law school, one of my law professors said, when legislators are creating a new law, how many times have we looked at this, whether state level or federal or whatnot? You look at a law or any kind of manual, and it's written down in a way to where you're like, what? Shouldn't there be other words in here that make more sense, that connect some dots for the livelihood? You know, let's say the veteran, I don't call it deserves, that's emotional, but the veteran qualified. The veteran went to war or was trained to do these things. That's what the veterans, that's why service people join, because they got that heart of gold and they want those benefits. They want the money for their service, and then they go to war, they get blown up. Because, I mean, I know you and I are standing on our own literal 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got clients who are in their 70s, late 70s, who are Vietnam guys who are drafted. Imagine how fucked their life has been since then.
Sure.
I'm a GWAT guy, so I started out in the 90s in the infantry, then pivoted, flew medevac. So I've seen the whites of the enemy's eyes. I've been shot at. I've held crazy hovers and stuff, and blood and guts and all the kind of stuff. So we can talk about that as we keep moving. But it's corruption, one word, corruption, that the government does not take care of our veterans. Mm-hmm. They have high expectations of us. They have high expectations. As a service member, you will be sharp and be professional. And I was both enlisted and an officer and worked with warrant officers and stuff like that, worked all the way up to special operations levels and things like that, and other stories to follow on that, to expand on that. Holy fuck, man. I mean, corruption is at the highest it's ever been because it's so fucking public. And it's not just at the border of Texas. It's not just being pushed out over some foreign country, all these pallets of cash and all this kind of stuff, and $85 billion worth of our shit being in Afghanistan without any kind of any level of responsibility. So that's why I love that I call this what the fuck VA. So I know VA stuff. I know VA money because as a veteran, the main gatekeeper to a veteran's dollars, life-changing dollars, is going through the VA. So let me start off with a pay chart. So when the government does anything, going back to my law school line, when the government does anything, they're going to look at the do's and don'ts. Here's what we want to do, which is take care of the veterans, or here's what we don't want to do, which is take care of the veterans. So when you look at a pay chart, so a guy said to me, he was very similar to what Rob just said. He said something like, well, Albert, you know, I've been around a long time. My wife is in the service too. And I hear you saying the word corruption. And he said, but I've just not seen it myself. And I said, okay, let me show you this pay chart. And I shared my screen with him. And although I'm not going to share my screen with you, I'm happy to do that. My staff and I have briefings that we do every day with this pay chart on it. But let me just tell you, for you folks out there who think that you're good at 70 or good at never applying or good at 80, good at 90% on the VA's pay chart, disability chart, you're blowing smoke up your own ass. Your ignorance is bliss, if I say it that way. You're not purposefully doing anything or whatnot, but the government is purposefully screwing you. So going from 90 to 100 is a basic family of four, a $1,500 a month raise. So I was at 90% for 5 years, not knowing. So calculating that, that's over $65,000 of mine that I sure as hell would have wanted in. And once it's off the table with the government, it's off the table. So two things you can never get back: time and money. So
not including property taxes too,
which is sick and gross too, right? Yeah, exactly. So I get asked that question all the time. Hey, I was in this academy or whatever in flight school, and then I did 20-something years flying, blah blah blah. My wife wants to know, when I get back pay, is that back pay going to go to my service? Well, it should, and that's why I've got a big check over my shoulder here. Let's compare veterans to NFL. An NFL player gets their ass beat for years, and they get paid millions of dollars. And even now, college kids are suing, or had I guess they won a case on this, where college kids can make money based off of their likeness and their own name, which they should, and not have big corporations or whatever taking money off their name. And so the why aren't veterans the same way? Why aren't we making crazy levels of money that we know about? Because it is set aside. It's set aside there. I know this because I reverse engineered it. The gate that's out there, when you get to 100% like I am, the gate opens up because the VA's main gatekeeper. And then, like Dylan said, property taxes. So there's property taxes out there. Even if you're saving $1,000 a month in property taxes over a 40-year lifetime, that's $500,000 of your dollars. College for your kids, like, I'll give you an example. One of my clients stood up MARSOC, and he was denied. He retired as an 06, but he was denied voc rehab to pay for his PhD. I know it's called something else now, but voc rehab is what I used a couple years ago. And that's the other thing. Fucking hell. The government has just people thinking up new titles to chapters usually stay the same. Chapter, whatever, blah, 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 stays the same, but the title changes a million times. You know, pre 9/11, post 9/11, GI Bill, blah, blah, Voc rehab, whatever the fuck they call it now. There's all these people just thinking shit up, and it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. It should go to the veterans. My whole stance is, in a positive way, there should be a positive transition of power to the civilian market. If people really want to help veterans, help them. The civilian market will help them. I've helped deliver over $9 billion in less than 5 years. I know how to help them. That's true help, life-changing help. That's why I call it the fulfilled veteran, not half-assed, not, well, gee whiz, here you go. Aw shucks project. It's the fulfilled veteran. So, but I'm reminded of an 06 fighter pilot that said, Albert, great briefing. And I'm not cussing at you, but God damn it. The older I got, the more I thought I was going to trust my government, and the less I trust them. This is fucking stupid. The government's hiding all kinds of money from me, and it's mine. I should have gotten it in the first place. And all these entities and agencies out there, from like what Rob was saying, the transition people who are government contractors at the lowest stupid fucking level, and they hide all your money from you. They don't tell you about where your money is, where your check is, and about your property taxes, about your kids in college stuff, all that life-changing money. So I know I'm bogarting some of this chat here, but let me turn it over to Dylan. Let me know a little bit of your experience with this too, what you've seen.
Not necessarily my experience, but I'm gonna go back to the corruption. You know, nobody believes that the government isn't corrupt and this and that, but let's look at Agent Orange. Why was that covered up? Or why was the burn pits covered up? Why did it take so long for the PACT Act to come around? You know,
one even like you're bringing up things that are happening now, or and there's even more. There's all kinds of toxic exposures that my clients who, like, I've got an Army guy he was in the Army in probably late 70s, early 80s, and he was stationed in Hawaii, but they would send him out to where all the nuclear bombs were tested, and he was doing still cleanup out there. So he is, as he says, riddled with fucking cancer. That's pretty gross. If you remember the Christmas Day tsunami from, God, 15 something years ago now, two of my clients were driving, Navy guys were driving bulldozers. There's 200,000 dead on the beach and in the shoreline and stuff like that. And these guys are driving bulldozers, just mowing bodies over and pushing them up. And I mean, not to get into gross as shit, but this is stuff that our veterans have been through. And I always link it back to, I chose what I did. I chose to be an infantryman at first. And although I was taught to shoot people in the face, I thankfully never had to. And then I pivoted to being a medevac pilot. And that was my lane. I don't like being cold, wet, and sandy. I will never be a Navy SEAL. But I was, warm and cozy flying my medevac chopper. And I loved it, and bittersweet, of course. But like I knew what I was getting into when the radio call came off, and I had to go to do a mission. I always feel bad for people who I didn't sign up for this. Like,
yeah, we did.
Well, to the point of, like, I don't want to be cold, wet, and sandy. I'm a medevac pilot.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to have an ecosystem, right? And you have to have the badasses out there who can go get cold, wet, and sandy. Because I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. But I feel bad for the people who didn't sign up for something like a mortuary affairs person or something, or a chaplain's assistant who ends up getting pushed into mortuary affairs.
Yeah. That's
a big fucking difference. One of my clients, he's a forensic pathologist, and he was one of the guys that got called in for the school shooting in Texas not too long ago. So he's the one that was there to receive the bodies and all that kind of stuff. And just saying, man, I mean, these guys, some people choose to do what they're doing, like he did and I did, but other people out there, they didn't choose that. I mean, and that's even just barely scratching the surface. Then you start adding other stuff on there, like, I've got all kinds of different rape cases. I mean, men, women being raped, and all kinds of people being picked on, all that kind of stuff, and toxic leaders and all this kind of stuff too, and
just sexual assault,
all kinds of stuff.
It's everywhere, man. It was horrible in the Air Force. I've seen people come and go because of it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. it's ridiculous that that's being brought into the military. But I mean, look at society now. But yeah, like you said, there was the tsunami over in Japan that took out that nuclear plant. Actually, the president of the nonprofit that I'm on the board of, he's experiencing side effects from that because he was deployed there, and now his body is completely deteriorating. I mean, he's had a knee replacement. He's going to get something to do with the spine. I mean, all the cartilage, everything is just deteriorating in his body because of that radiation poisoning. And he's got tested, and the VA is not recognizing it. And he's talked to the I can't remember the name of the guy, but the reporter that actually exposed the burn pits. He was talking to him, and he just fell off the face of the earth. He tried to get a hold of the congressman and all that. Nobody wanted to take it. Nobody wanted to do anything with it. And I think that goes back to corruption. I mean, who's pulling the strings here that doesn't want to recognize that, these Navy guys that were over at this nuclear plant exposed to all this radiation, they don't want to help them or like the PACT Act. Why can't they have something for the nuclear plant stuff? I mean, they went through it. I don't know.
Yeah. If I'm sorry, Dylan, I didn't.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to follow up on what you were mentioning, which was, unique individuals doing unique things. And, God bless all of our special operators and every single service, right, for the things that they're doing. But, both of you touched on several things that are extremely important. One is the psychological aspect of some very difficult types of missions. And this is where I really started to learn that I've got to do a better job of looking out for myself and actually looking out for the people assigned to me, because as part of my duties, one of the things that a foreign area officer can do is be involved in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. Depending on where you're at in the world, these things come up. And then you volunteer for these basic kinds of missions. We call them Tiger teams, where you get, some Navy guys, some Air Force guys, some Army guys, and some Marines. And depending on logistics and skill sets, you put this team together. They've never trained together. They just get thrown together, and then they go do stuff, which is fantastic. Whenever you see these gray tails on, TV, delivering stuff to volcanoes or earthquakes and all these things, it's absolutely beautiful. It's, it's great that our country can perform these types of missions. But what nobody ever talks about, and I responded to volcanoes in the Philippines, I responded to earthquakes, responded to mudslides, responded to floods. And what nobody talks about is how devastating and how terrible these missions are. And what I mean by that is, like, seeing stacks of bodies is not something you can unsee. Seeing hundreds of hungry kids is not something you can unsee. And now I think we're doing a better job now of briefing people before they go into things like this, giving them the psychological first aid coping skills, critical incident stress management, and types of things that you need. But when we were doing this in the 90s, and then I continued later with different assignments to do some more, they would just throw people together and then just send them home without any debriefings afterwards. Okay, go home. And, sometimes you keep up with people, you become friends, and you talk to each other. And, some of these guys weren't sleeping for weeks at a time because, you can't unsee this stuff. And let me tell you, none of this stuff is actually documented because it's a 2-week TDY or it's a 3-week thing. It's considered a deployment from your regular unit. And none of that gets documented by the VA or by your service on what you've seen, what you've done. You've been exposed to all kinds of toxic chemicals. When a flood is the nastiest thing known to man, because you have sewer, you have chemicals, you have hospital waste, you have every single thing in standing water, to include very toxic chemicals, right? And if you don't have the right equipment, you actually can get chemical burns in a flood. And so we had some guys get chemical burns. Oh, I'll take care of it. It'll be okay. It's just a little thing. And now, years later, I wonder, did that chemical burn in a flood affect this person for the rest of their lives? I will never know. But it's these types of things, these unique opportunities, if you will, that never get documented, and then you pay the price later on. And I was a person like that. And yes, I served in the 7th Special Forces Group for 3 years as an intelligence officer. But beyond that, I would raise my hand, and I worked with the DEA Air Wing. I got exposed to defoliants, doing that. I volunteered for a United Nations mission. Got exposed to all kinds of stuff because there was a big fuel spill, where we were doing things. And all those things were very temporary, and none of it was documented. So for all the folks listening to this podcast now, and as it lives on forever, maybe years from now when you're listening, as you're doing things in the military, have some type of letter, some type of thing written up about where and when you did something on a temporary basis, and if something happened to you. Because as I said these things in my VA out briefing type of thing, oh, well, where is that in your record? Or how do we know you served on a UN mission? How do we know you went to humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation and breathed volcanic ash for 2 weeks? We don't know any of this. It's not in your record. And so that's one thing I wanted to put in here as just to tell people, every single thing you do in the military, document it, even if it's on your own and you just sign it, right? At least it's something. Over to you guys.
Yeah. And so I know we're talking a lot about PACT today too, but environmental exposures has been around for a long time. So I call PACT baby brother and environmental exposures big brother. So you can Google it, folks. You can find it. There's 2 main types of death benefits out there. One of them is for service connected. The other one is not service connected. Not service connected is based off of time. So when you're 100%, like I am, if I fall off my roof 11 years from now, that's an accident. So non-service connected. My wife will receive a lesser amount, $1,500 a month or something like this. Environmental exposures, which I help my clients receive, is $2,500 a month at a minimum. And that's even if you're non-retired folks like me. And all you have to do is tie a bow around it with some medical or some fresh evidence that this is something you were connected with, and that you died of it, because it's going to be something I call it heart, lung, and blood, because you have to die of something. So if you die of any kind of heart, lung, blood thing, and you have environmental exposures, then that does cover a lot. And not only the things that we talked about today too, but I think PACT is baby brother. I've heard even just dumb shit that I think honestly PACT is another opportunity for the VA to just send people on a wild goose chase. And Albert, it's not doing anything. It's not doing anything. It's a death benefit. It's if you like, I'll give you an example. One of my guy that came to me, he's now my client. He went through the PACT situation process, and he is rated at 0% for sinuses due to PACT. Okay, well, I mean that's something, but did he receive? So there's right now money and mid-range money. Did he receive any right now money for it? Nope. Mid-range money for his kids in college. So really, he took absolutely no immediate steps forwards in his life, and his wife would have to prove it later if he died of only sinuses. He only had sinuses on there. So what if he died of a heart attack?
Yeah, it's not connected.
He's fucked, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like if you and PACT, the burn pit didn't have anything to do with his heart attack. Well, maybe environmental exposures is more of a big brother. So that's why I say look it up. You can Google it and find that out. But
saying that, I've actually seen some people get decreased in their benefits for filing for the PACT Act.
One of my clients did. Yeah, he was 100%, and they bumped him down to 90.
Yeah, and I think that's a bunch of BS.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the people that are rating us veterans don't even have a medical degree. They're just going off of what a piece of paper says. Oh, this much, And there's so much that people can change to make it more fair.
Yeah.
And
guys, for our listeners, can you both, either one of you, explain how somebody could get decreased?
The corruption of the VA. So yeah, this guy, he was 100% already, and he said permanent in total. I didn't see any of his paperwork, so I would have to verify that. But he was just on my calendar like last week. And he said that he had gone through the PACT, and he was 100% when he went in and came out the other end. They said, hey, we'll grant you a couple of PACT items at bullshit ratings, 0%, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they just said, hey, while you're here, we're just going to sweep the leg. So, and that's why I tell my clients, I go off of what the VA does, not what the VA says. So I'm not going to, I know there's good people and good people and bad systems. So I'm not here to poo-poo on everybody in the VA is dog shit. No, I'm talking leadership. They know this. They, just like being in Afghanistan, these generals knew where they put people. They knew it was horrible, and people got fucking killed. We can talk about that later. Movies are made on that shit, so we can come back to that. But the government knows, the VA specifically knows, that these veterans qualify for money. And right now, money, mid-range money, and death benefit money. And it's all different. It's all different paperwork. So I call it doors of dollars. So you have to, I'll give you a widow example. So a widow that I'm trying to help out right now, which by the way, I don't charge widows. So I charge my clients, so I don't have to charge widows. But yeah, I got this widow and she's spunky. She's from New Jersey. So she's spunky and she's a fighter. However, being a fighter doesn't always matter. And so this is how I came up with the terms of doors of dollars, was because she was briefing me up on what happened. Her Marine husband had died due to exposures. Cancer hit him pretty fast. Within 13 months of his diagnosis, he was already passed. He had, in essence, absolutely no time to get his paperwork squared away for veteran statuses, disability rating statuses, all that kind of stuff. And so she said to me, she's getting pretty high blood pressure chatting about it. She's like, well, I've been working in and out with the government for the past 6 years. And Albert, should I demand that my husband's dead, so the VA should pay me these dollars? And I said, no, let me calm me down a little bit here, because if you go to any government agency, IRS or anything like that, and just say, well, I see a door, let me kick it. I was a badass, or my husband died, the government's just going to lock that door even harder on you. And so you have to go up to the door, look at it, and see, what does it say on the door on the instructions? Take your hand, put it quarter turn to the right, and pull. Not step up there and kick the fucking shit out of the door. So it doesn't matter what happened, what the extremity is of it, an accident, any kind of physical exposure. Hey, I'm a Ranger and I fell. Those sorts of things. Doesn't matter if I was 3 months or 30 years of service. It doesn't matter. It's paperwork. It's all about being compliant and in the right amount of timing, right sequence of timing, because you have to get to the VA. The VA is hiding our money from us and other government agencies behind these disabilities. So that's why you'll never hear me. I purposefully stay away from the words of disabilities. I call them boo-boos and things like that, because you're not disabled. My clients are not disabled. They're airline pilots. There are all kinds of badasses out there, but the government is the one who hid their money behind a disability rating. So I didn't do that. I just know where the gate is and how to get the gate open and go to those other doors to help them. So yeah, that's all part of the corruption story there.
And Albert, you brought up something, and I know both of you guys work together. And so I will say it unsolicited and unpaid, so everybody understands that you guys in the Fulfilled Veteran Project helped me so much, because this goes back to, this kind of corruption theme, right? When you declare somebody 40%, you kind of just hope they go away. And I think that's what a huge percentage of veterans do. Because the more I'm now intimately involved in this kind of strategizing of, regaining benefits that I should have had from the beginning, and I'm talking to other veterans, lots of friends of mine, I find so many people at this 40%, 45%, 35% level that I'm convinced it might be an unwritten strategy, but I'm convinced it's a strategy to just make veterans go away. Yep. And I did that. And then I started hearing about people who, quite frankly, had less going on physically than me, who had a much higher rating. And so I was kind of like, wow, not unlike what you guys say, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot on the VA, what the hell's going on? And so after looking into it and finding you guys, I I think I waited just because I didn't think I was able to do anything else on my own. And, when you look at the VA websites, yeah, all the information's there, but it's just a Byzantine empire of endless forms and instructions that are hard to get through when you're on your own, right? And I will also share this. Every single organization, AMVETS, VFW, American Legion, they're all great, but they all say you shouldn't ever pay for anything. Don't ever pay for anything. None of those services, work, and they're corrupt. They're just taking your money. Well, I want to say that, right here and right now, that I thank you guys tremendously for, one, giving me the opportunity to think like, you know what, I need to fight for myself a little better. And then two, actually making it happen, because the journey that you set out in the slides when you talk to veterans is the exact journey that I've been on. And it's been quite successful for me. So I just want to give a big shout out to your services and your attitude and what you guys do for people, because you got me off the bench. You got me to think about stuff that I need to do for myself. And I am sincerely thankful for it. So thank you, guys.
I appreciate you mentioning that too. And that's what I tell my kids too, is that, it's easy for people to sit in front of you and talk shit. It's very hard for somebody to just out of nowhere give you grace. So I appreciate your strength in doing that. Like my staff and I, we're all tough, but we make this look easy, but it's not. It's a nightmare. And since you're mentioning things like AMVETS and all that kind of stuff, so again, if they wanted help, they would. So if they wanted it easy, it would be. Everybody should receive that big fucking paycheck walking out the door. Hey, it's my last day of service. Here's your check. Here's some smart things. Don't blow it all at once. So it should be that. And I believe that things should be on the open market, where if not, like my son, he went to an event with me here in Indianapolis, and this was downtown Indianapolis, and we're right next to the library of Indianapolis, and there's all these veteran organizations in there, and they have everybody go around the room or come up to the speaker so they can talk from there. The speaker from up there, and microphone. That's what I was looking for. There we go. Found my words. So everybody go up to the microphone and just introduce yourself and what agency you're working with and that kind of thing. And there are probably like 5 or 6 agencies in there talking about home. Oh, we help homeless. We help the homeless, help homeless veterans. And then you walk outside after the event and there's homeless people there. So Liam at the time, he was 15, 16 or something like that. And he said, well, Dad, I'm trying to understand. There's like 7 agencies in there that were talking about helping homeless people, but then you walk outside and there's homeless people. So it's like, are they doing what they're saying they're supposed to do?
Well,
so that's why I stopped going to those events. I'm like, these people will find me. The right people will find me. And it's through word of mouth. I've worked with Rob, worked with his brother, that sort of thing. So that's what I like about what I do.
Like, you guys mentioned the PACT Act. Mm-hmm. And, I went to this big PACT Act briefing sponsored by my congresswoman. And, when you have these veterans events, they're always fantastic because you get to see so many wonderful citizens who've served our country. And there are these older Vietnam and even Korea era veterans that think like the PACT Act is something that they're going to be able to sign up for and see some immediate benefit. And it was never explained until the end of this thing. And I was so upset because, you got a congresswoman, you've got all these local mayors and leaders and all these people basically, applauding veterans. They had a color guard. They did all this stuff. They put on this big briefing. And then towards the end of the thing, they said, yeah, once you fill out everything and you get into our database and our system, we're looking at perhaps the first benefits on this rolling out in the next 5 or 6 years. And I'm like, what? Like, what? There's a whole bunch of people in here that are above 80. Mm-hmm. What are you guys doing 5 or 6 years from now? And then heralding yourselves and applauding. Why on earth does something like this take so long? But I mean, armed with foreknowledge and everything, I knew that I was doing better with you guys. But I went to this PACT Act and it just made me upset, actually, because they've passed a law. They've had all this trumpeting of all this information, and it actually freaking means nothing.
Yep. It's all a political tactic, I think.
Yeah. Well, like I always go back to those three words that we use in the military a lot: be, know, and do. Right. So if you want to be better, you got to know better and do better. That's what I hold myself to. I hold myself to a very high standard. I hold my staff to a very high standard. And when you see my staff ladies, you'll see that they may look nice and soft, but they are mean. they hold their own. They're little honey badgers. So we're not a nonprofit because, I mean, I've had two women named Amber that worked for me, and both of them cried a lot because they need to work with nonprofits. They needed to have less stress. This is dealing with not only the federal government at different levels, IRS this, and Department of VA, Department of Ed, all these dollars that are out there for veterans. It's tough. And it's finding out that, like, I had a Green Beret who said, Albert, great briefing. I knew Uncle Sam was fucking me. I just didn't know he was dry fucking me. Because he was very similar to what you just said, Rob. He was at 30% for mental health. Yeah. What the fuck? This was a running retired Green Beret, been pulling triggers for years.
Yeah.
He goes, what the fuck, man? And again, it's all, like, I hold this up a lot. This is a fake packet, but that's what I call it when you're doing any kind of packet. You have to have crisp paperwork that meets the criteria of the VA. So when you go to that door, that you go, okay, what's the door say? Turn this and turn. Okay, this is what you want. Here it is. So what's crazy is, like, with mental health, you don't have to have harsh words like, let's say, insomnia. It's just chronic sleep issues. Check the box. That's it. Like, but the VA has, we have to get on base for, I call it, use baseball terminology of getting on base for service connection. Then you go to an increase. Those are totally different metrics. You have to be service connected first, which is a process. Then you have to go through a different process to be increased. And then you have to check that. That's what I do with all my clients. I talked to your brother today about that of, hey, man, I always backwards plan. Did you receive these ratings for these dollars? There's, just to show everybody, when you get to 100%, retired or non-retired, it's about $4,000 a month. Every veteran out there qualifies for SMCS, which is about $400 to $500 more a month. I receive it now, $428 a month. And you have to hit certain benchmarks, which all veterans do qualify for. And it's one of the biggest items that VA is screwing special operators out of, because you have to be 100% on mental health and a couple other things, which we'll talk about another time. And a lot of these veterans out there are rated at, well, I'm at 70% for mental health, and then I've got, neck, back, and left shoulder, right shoulder, all that kind of stuff. So, like the usual math too, the math of, one of my clients said the other day, well, I'm currently sitting at 90% on e-benefits, but I calculated up and I'm at 150 something human math points. What the fuck? Like, that's a big question mark that people ask about. Why the hell? How am I at 400 and something? So yeah, it's crazy. The crazy math there. I had to make sure that once the government made a decision, now what? Are you receiving that money, or do we have to back up? Did you just receive 70%? Now we got to go back and do the paperwork again to get there, or do we have to go appeal it and all that kind of shit, which is another dog shit story. But as far as veterans having to appeal, I mean, I've had, worst story I've ever heard of was a woman who is in and out of a little claim, a little appeal for 10 fucking years. Oh. And she still came to me. And I said, lady, you're either going to love me or hate me for this, but she still wasn't 100%. She was still like 70 or 80 or 90. And I said, oh my gosh, I can help you more in 10 months than you've done in 10 fucking years. There's definitely a war on veterans. If you think I'm lying, I will tell you many stories of pallets of cash being pushed out when a mother of 8 is getting fucked. A veteran, all kinds of special operators, but like a mother of 8, what the fuck? Or any of us who've served. I don't want to put a gender to it or fucking any kind of caliber to it. We're veterans. We served. What the fuck? Where the fuck is our fucking money that we earned? Back to you, Rob.
No, I was just going to say, Albert, looking at this from a historical perspective, you're not alone in your thinking, right? You're like absolutely right, because if you go back to Revolutionary War history, it was when the Revolutionary Army was still encamped. The British had basically surrendered, but had not completely left New York. So we still had to keep an army near it, but encamped and not in battle, right? That Congress had promised Revolutionary War soldiers a pension and some land, and then they were reneging on that. And the army almost marched on Philadelphia to get their benefits that they had been promised. And if it wasn't for George Washington, we would have had a military coup. So this is like a common theme from the beginning of our army or our nation, is that we ask veterans to do things, and then at the end of the conflagration, when it's hard and expensive, we cheat them. Mm-hmm. This is it has been going on the entire history of our country. So you're not alone in your thinking, and it's going to be people like you, Dylan, myself, and every other veteran listening to this that has to, of course, peacefully be engaged in defending, their rights, their benefits, and going back to the benefits. In my own personal case, I don't feel that anyone has ever lied to me. But what I mean by being overwhelmed is when you're transitioning from the military and you have to go through all these different briefings, and you're, quintessentially, drinking from that fire hose type of thing. And the person from the Department of Labor comes in and tells you how to get a job for 2 hours. Then the person from VA gives you this, 400-page booklet and says, hey, all your benefits are right here. Read through this. You got any questions? Here's a brief outline of what you need to do. Ready, go. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. And so is any information being hid from you? No. It's just that it's so freaking overwhelming that somebody needs to go through after the initial medical exam and filing and all these things, and really explain, like, no, here's all these other benefits, and here's all these other things that Congress and the executive branch have made available to you as a veteran, and here's how you qualify for it, right? And so, again, services like yours are priceless, because you're helping veterans understand what they're really due in phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 1 is just the beginning. Phase 2 is like all the other stuff. And I think it's really in phase 2 when you really learn and get at all the things that, again, are not hidden from you, but you're not going to remember from that transition briefing, or you're not going to think about, property taxes, depending on the state you live in, property taxes, license taxes, and hazardous material exposure, as you were talking about, and all the other things, right? Because I think most people stop if they were to get near 100%. One, I think those people stop. You mentioned some 80 and 90% people. I think those people think, well, that's good enough. Or look, I got a lot of benefits and I'm good to go. They should keep pursuing this until 100. And then after that, they really should do phase 2 and all the other parts of this, because there's a lot more out there. I'll just leave it at that, because you really got me thinking about this.
It's insane how much is out there. And that's what I was glad I told your brother today, that I love when I get to brief somebody on good news that, hey, the VA did do the right thing, which is agree that, again, let me see, he's what? He just turned 65 or something like that? Or
yes, 2 days ago. Yeah.
So he turned 65, and on his birthday, by the way, which is, we got to talk about birthdays, but on his birthday, he received $20-something thousand in his bank account, which is just the beginning. So, right. Yeah. Right. And so I was like, oh, yes. And I took him through, are you receiving this and this and this? Yes. Great. Awesome. Because I love when I get to hear and share good news. That, a good news story. I get to tell you about how you're receiving the money that you qualify for and that we're aiming for it in its abundance. Now we get to move on to the other thing that you're getting fucked out of. So that's what I told him too. I was like, hey, you qualify all retired veterans, even medically retired veterans qualify for combat related special compensation, CRSC, and it can add up to like $2,000 more a month, and on top of 100%. So. don't believe the hype of 100% is it and I'm done. But then, of course, people get to a point where they're like, oh, I don't want to poke the bear. They all say that to me. So I've got a briefing on that. Oh, I don't want to poke the bear. Well, I can help get my clients. That's what I do, is get them way past poke the bear level. So one of those is that, so by the time I'm done with my clients, all veterans qualify for 100% on their e-benefits, permanent and total status, but way better body part list, reflecting them 500 or more human math points on their e-benefits, so that their base pay, as I call it, is based off of all the dollars of dollars that they've earned through their service. So if your brother has his money, you have your money, Dylan has his money, I have my money. It's all my own silo. It's your silo. So don't believe the bullshit out there of that you're taking from my pile and I'm taking from your pile. Isn't that corruption in and of itself? If somebody is brainwashing you, I can't tell you how many fucking genius clients that I've got that work at NASA and SpaceX and all that kind of stuff. Blah, 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 Green Beret, whatever SEAL. You guys believe the craziest shit out of the government. Oh, well, I couldn't apply for that because I'd already applied for it in the past. Have you ever been told no for something and you just took that at face value? You were denied for, how many people go to flight school, jump school, and maybe get fucking a no? I got denied to get into the service. I got denied to go to Rangers school. I got denied 3 fucking times for voc rehab. You know, that,
sure.
Come on, goddammit. So,
and, well, I'm sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, going back to, these crazy things that people believe, I've heard older veterans from Vietnam era say, well, I don't want to take it away from the guy that's missing a leg or missing an arm and this and that. And I try to tell everybody, it doesn't matter how much money you're getting from the VA. It's not going to affect anybody else at all, ever. And the thing is, touching on, you call the disabilities the boo-boos. A lot of these people think that, kind of a civilian mindset, oh, a VA disability, I'm disabled, I can't work, I can't do this, I can't do that. And that's completely bullshit. When it comes to VA disability, you're not disabled. Like you said, you're not disabled.
Right.
It's basically compensation for what the military broke on you. And now you have to do things differently in your life, pay somebody to mow your yard, pay somebody to, clean your gutter, whatever the hell you can't do anymore because your back hurts, your neck hurts, your legs hurt, your knee's going to give out if you get on a freaking ladder. I mean, that I try, even my dad's guilty of it too. I don't think I deserve that. I'm gonna leave it for somebody that's missing a leg or, something like that. But 10%, even for tinnitus, will help you. I mean, it'll get you there. And like you said, don't stop. If the VA pays you for your bad days, not your good days. And that's another thing I try to tell people. And then, touching base on people that are still currently serving, if I hear or know somebody that's serving, I tell them to go to the doctor for whatever. Document it. Paper cut. If you're a desk worker, go to the freaking doctor. Document it. I mean, there's that stupid mindset in the military that you're a punk if you go to sick hall. I know it's probably like that back when y'all were in. It was like that when I was in. And a lot of people are scared to go see the mental health clinic because we're going to get kicked out of the military. And you know what? That's happened a lot that I've seen when I was in. It does seem like they're trying to get away from that. I do believe people need help when they need help, and they shouldn't be scared to go get help for losing their job. So that's just where I stand on those couple of topics. I just wanted to catch up because I was letting everybody else talk. So
since it's an election year, what do you guys think about like more and more Congress people and senators and things like that being veterans and shining lights on not only the corruption, the FBI or whatever, but also the VA? What do you guys think about that? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, I think importantly, I would have to look at the exact numbers, but I have an impression that every election cycle, we elect less and less veterans. So I am starting to actually vote more towards veterans than I am actual maybe party lines, because we need more veterans and more people who have served in any of our services in Congress.
Well, I've always said that to be able to be a political figure, you should have been somehow connected with the military. You know, the reserves, active duty, whatever. I've always said that. So obviously, I'm gonna lean more towards, hey, he's a veteran, I'm gonna vote for him.
Speaking of that, so what are they like? We used to play a game when I was growing up, and I'm a 1980s born kid, so I'm 43. So I was born in 1980, and so at least I was able to go. I always play this game of what's the next 10 years going to look like. And my growing up, it made sense. So if I was in junior high and, hey, what's 10 years from now going to look like? It's pretty on point. I grew up on a cattle ranch, so I know what rotary phones are, things like that. So, but I mean, now it's the future generation of, I don't want to say just entitlement, but just the
Entitlement.
You ever seen there's a video out there, you guys probably get a kick out of it, where there's these people are on the escalators and they're in the mall, and like one's going up and the other's going down like they usually do in a mall, and the escalator stops and the people are just on the escalator going, help.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. like they don't know how to use stairs.
Yeah. And that is, without being mean, that's one of the best for anything of, like, you know, gender this or whatever the hell, just the weakness that is somebody, and human nature is human nature. So there's going to be weak veterans, strong veterans, weak politicians, strong politicians, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to just, in essence, pick on the weak, that if you're weak, fucking get out of the way. You're only creating more harm. So if I were able to categorize folks in two categories of helpful or harmful, if you're weak, get the fuck out of the way. You're only there for your own fucking job security, and that's it. So you're not helping anybody, and that you may not be able to see it, but like I said, I will never be a Navy SEAL because I don't like being cold, wet, fucking sandy. So I'm not going to be that. Self-assess. I don't want to be that. And if you're not helping someone, get the fuck out of the way, because somebody else needs to help them. Yeah. And the helpful person will show up. So that's why I think that regardless of political statuses and things, that all these agencies that are run by the government need to be run by the local economy, and I would say, you know, God-fearing people. That's what America is. So I'm not going to keep saying America first kind of a thing, but like, yes, we need to, when I went through SEER school, that's what they kept saying. Hey, take care of yourself first. You got to breathe for yourself first, then help your buddies out.
Yep.
So you have to make sure you're squared away. If you're going to hinder somebody, you got to go, hey man, I'm hurt. I can't fucking move. Something like that. So I may need to be carried out of here. But for our moving forwards, our country is splitting up. These big global elites are trying to come in and take over us, and they're actually doing a damn fine job, because that's how $85 billion of our shit is over in some foreign land and now distributed everywhere to aim against us. And what's the next step? How do we, in this second hour of our chat, how can we make the next 10 years better? We've got a lot of us GWAT era guys who are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. A lot of my clients are those 3 decades. So how do us GWAT guys pass the torch to make life better for our own children? Let me put it that way. Our own children, not for the world. Start with our own fucking kids. How do we do that?
That's a tough question.
It's a very tough question. I would offer expanding on what Dylan mentioned in terms of, in order to participate as a senior elected official, one must have been a veteran. I would expand that discussion. I've always been a big believer of this. I know it's kind of a radical idea in this day and age, but I'm a huge proponent of national service, because quite frankly, I feel that we would have less war. I feel that we would have less conflict if everybody was paying their share. And what I mean by share is service. Now, maybe you could say, not unlike Germany or some other European countries, maybe it doesn't have to be in the military. Maybe your national service could be with schools or with hospitals or with national parks or doing things like, my grandfather during the Depression era served in the Civilian Conservation Corps, a very militarized, this is how a lot of our national parks were built, were by people who needed jobs, right? So that was an economically tough era. But I feel that if people had more skin in the game, we would not be involved in ridiculous military adventures around the world for short-term reasons, right? And so, God bless all of our veterans who've participated in anything, but it was not their choice, right? Afghanistan was nobody's choice. It was several administrations thinking through the issue, not having the wherewithal to end it, not unlike Vietnam. And then this current administration just pulled chocks at the last second, disastrously, surrendering for all lack of other expression, and then just moved on, right? Just moved on. No, that was a success. Nothing to see here. This hand is doing something while this other hand is doing something else in either Ukraine or now somewhere in the Red Sea or something that's involving the Middle East. And so, and why can they get away with doing that? It's because such a small percentage of Americans serve in our nation's military services. But if it was everybody's son and everybody's cousin and everybody's husband, I think our political leaders would have to be a lot more circumspect in just genuflecting and sending troops overseas quickly. I'll just leave it at that for a second.
Yeah. Let's categorize people in two types, either superheroes or supervillains. Where do you go, Dylan?
Where do I go?
I said ready, go.
So ready, go.
Let's categorize people into two types, because the VA wants you to believe that you're a super villain, but really my people are superheroes. So how do we help superheroes fly more? And let me say it this way too. So there's a lot more evil people out there than there are good. So there's a lot more supervillains than there are superheroes. But like that line proverb says of if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, have a team. So how do we superheroes link our arms together as much as we can, starting with our own land, which is America? How do we do that?
I think we need to be given the proper tools, like how the Marines say, a Marine and his weapon are the deadliest things on earth. So I think we need to be equipping our fellow brothers and sisters in arms and with the correct tools to be able to get the shit done that we need to get done. It's really a tough question to, how do we help? Who, what, when, and where, and how.
So let's use the Texas border as a good example, because right now you're in a bit of a fucking pickle. We've got the federal government says, come on over, no gates, whatever. But then the Constitution says, Texas has authority, and Texas says, well, let's get National Guard out there. And now you've got Texas getting involved with that, which I grew up in Texas from 1984 to 98. So a good long stint, and lived there for a while after that too. So I've been there a long time. I know Texas. I grew up with that Texas mentality of on the map, where you ever seen that, where it's like Texas and not Texas. So I know what it feels like to be a Texan. And but I've been in Indiana for 11 years now. But I'm concerned that this is not rhetorical. It's physical. You've got no shit enemy coming into a state and our nation. And we've got the federal government saying, no, don't Texas. And Texas going, come a little bit further this way, get my line of fire so I can fucking blast your head off. Yeah. I think we're in for something legit fucking dangerous.
Well, I'm a diehard Texan. I'm through and through. I'm born and raised. And also I'm half Mexican. I'm half white, half Mexican. So this is kind of on both sides. My mom's first generation in the United States. And the thing is, yes, I do believe in immigration the correct way. So I believe everybody has a right to come here if they're coming here to make America better, to make themselves better, the correct way, through the entrance, not over my freaking fence. Because
superhero way.
if you come over my fence in my house, you're getting shot. I mean, that's just, who are we letting into our country through my home? You know what I mean? And that's just, it's ridiculous. And like you said, the Constitution, if the United States government sends any agency down to the Texas border to interfere with Texas operations at the border, that's against the Constitution. That's treason against the United States, against Texas, against us. I mean, so say what you want, but I do believe in Texas right.
It's interesting, Albert. It's and Dylan, as this thing gets portrayed on TV, it becomes, binary, good versus evil, black versus white. Oh, you nasty people who are, not culturally attuned, that hate immigrants. That's not true at all. That's a ridiculous supposition that Americans don't like immigrants, because almost 98% of us are the products of immigrants from some kind of era.
Everybody came from somewhere,
right? Some kind of era.
Yeah.
So, but the discussion goes back to what Dylan was pointing out, which is, we need immigration reform, which is, do the right process, come here legally, be registered. Of all these millions of people that are coming into our country, we don't even know who they are. Yeah. They haven't even passed their IDs, and if they even have legal IDs, of who they are and where they're actually from. I would like people to be able to work here legally, come back and forth, do the things that you need to do. There's a lot of people that do that already. Our Southwest states, as you guys know, actually economies, are built on that. People who work legally in agricultural jobs or otherwise, and they come back and forth. There's a legal way to do this, but you can't just open the floodgates and say, hey, anybody who wants to come in, because you're actually changing the composition of our nation. And again, we go back to this part of people who do not have skin in the game, right? You're going to have people not paying taxes. And this is another thing. When you come here legally, you register, you work legally, you're going to pay taxes. I support that all day long. You should be able to go to school. You should be able to get health care as long as you're working legally and pay taxes. But that's not what the majority of these folks are doing. So they're using hospitals. Every day on the news, New York, Denver, Chicago, Miami, overrun with a problem that the federal government created and is just pushing down on the states and just walking away from it. I don't know what the future of this thing is going to be, but you can't just flood New York City with people and expect this to be okay. Right. And it's going to work out. Local social service agencies will take care of this. No, that's not true. That's just not true. And I think it's disgusting that you can. Now, if that's your policy, then state your policy. No, our policy is to open up the borders because here's why we think it's a good thing. Okay, that's your policy. I don't agree with it, but that's your policy. This isn't even a policy. It's do one thing, look the other way, and then say the border's secure. Border's not secure. This is ridiculous. And I do not want this to happen. Oh my gosh, knock on wood, right? But if there's another 9/11, it'll be our own damn fault. But maybe that will be the thing that galvanizes America again to some kind of action to protect itself and to honor itself and to staff and equip the military that it needs to face these challenges and threats. Over.
And, going back to, benefits, they're making it so much easier for illegal immigrants to get benefits than veterans. They're helping illegal immigrants more than they're helping veterans. They're kicking kids out of school in New York to put illegal immigrants in that school.
And as long as there's one homeless veteran, we're wrong.
Yeah.
As long as there's
Right.
one homeless,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
one
Yeah.
homeless person in the United States, and we're
Well,
out here
true.
helping Ukraine and
True.
all these other people. And every day I come home, there's 2 veterans and 4 homeless people on the side of the road asking for help.
Sure.
I mean, do I think that they may have put themselves there? Of course, but
Yeah.
they need help to get back on their feet. They need help to get through what they're going through, and we're helping another country. It's not even part of, I'm not even going to get into that part.
Well, no, but you're right, Dylan. It's not sustainable. None of this stuff is sustainable. You can't just let it go on. And to look the other way is in my opinion criminal, right?
Yeah.
You're actually not serving the United States. There's all kinds of various political theories and opinions that serve the United States in ways that I may not agree with, but you're an elected official and you're trying to serve the United States. What's going on right now does not serve the interests of the United States. Pulling out of Afghanistan like we did not serve the interests of the United States, and it certainly did not serve the interests of the American people.
Yeah, and that's what I get when you say the United States. It's us. We are the United States. It's kind of like how God said, or Jesus said, that the church isn't a building. A church is a group of people coming together to congregate, and that's the thing that a lot of political figures are doing, is trying to break up that congregation and put us against each other, obviously. And as an American, we should all be on the same side. And it's easy to sit here and say this all day long and show the correct future, but when will it change?
Well, I like the discussion of states' rights versus federal government rights, because it's a fundamental constitutional issue that has put into the system to create a certain amount of friction. Whatever is not specifically stated in the Constitution is left to the states. And so I admire Texas and I admire Texans for saying, like, no, this is our border too, and we're going to defend it and we're going to protect it. And the federal government is in egregious error of what they're doing, and we will do otherwise. I think this would be interesting if it gets challenged in the Supreme Court as to who's right and what's going on. But I salute Texans and Texas for trying to do the right thing,
along with the 25 other states that are endorsing Texas on this.
Yeah,
I just wonder, like, we're just oddly, literally in like a 8, 9, 10 layer Mexican standoff. Of you got the,
no pun intended,
local police, doing this. You got Border Patrol doing this. You got fucking veterans down there, and families that own the property. So everybody's got rights, individual rights, and that sort of. And so you've got so many different layers. And then you start adding the complexity of Florida sending or preparing to send more people too. And I know you're mentioning the Supreme Court. So it's like you got the judicial branch who's going to take their time to figure out who's right and who's wrong. But as we know, once you step foot in my property or whatever, I've got legal recourse to shoot you in the fucking face. Well, so protect my family kind of thing. So I think this is, I mean, if you go back to like 200 years ago, a 5-cent tax would have caused a revolution. And we've got,
it did,
state level, federal level, migrants or whatever, migrant trains and all the string pullers, whatever Soros is and all that kind of stuff too. Not to get that deep into the weeds in this one, but like, sure. My point is, you got like 19 layers of people with fucking guns pointed at each other right now. So I wonder, is the court going to get there fast, or is there going to be some legit fucking bullets being thrown? And I don't want to say either way, but like, we have to, if not now, then win. Like,
yeah.
Well, we certainly don't want any blue on blue problems, but the people I feel the worst for are actually the immigrants that are caught in the middle of all this, because it's not really their fault in terms of like, being directed that, people all of us would fight for a better life if we didn't have economic opportunity or if we were being politically oppressed. But what's not being talked about is the calamity and the humanitarian crisis that has been created for these people, right? We're allowing them to be pawned by drug runners and cartels. There's massive human trafficking. There's child prostitution. There's people that are hungry. There's all this other stuff. And we have the audacity to go to the United Nations and wag our little finger when there's some other country that does some of these same things and talk about rights and democracy and woe be unto you and all these other things. And yet we're doing that. We're guilty of being a third world nation, creating human rights abuses and problems on our own border and not doing anything about it.
Yeah. And that's where it gets kind of finicky too. Like, you know, obviously we don't want to let the wrong people in at this time,
Right.
But at the same time, people are getting hurt because of our process. I think they need to focus more on the actual process of getting people here legally, and vetting them correctly, than anything else. I mean, yes, we have to have people at the fence of the border to make sure, you know, the wrong people aren't coming in. But obviously, there's going to be the mix up of good people and bad people. And and the thing is, you don't know who, and that's the scary part.
I've never understood why this is such a third rail in politics, why a bipartisan commission can't get a hold of this and do immigration reform. We just can't get it done. And I don't know why. It's not racist. It's not anti-religion. No one's focused on one particular set of people or one particular religion. And it just strikes me as the oddest thing in the world that America can't get any of this done because we're afraid of it. Oh my God, we might offend somebody. It's anti-Hispanic. No, it's not. It's anti-Muslim. No, it's not. Right? It's just like every other industrial nation in the world controls their border. I mean, for crying out loud, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, another radio host, Michael Berry, he's actually from the area that I live in. He actually said, you know, a lot of these politicians, they'll use border control, the abortion, you know, pro-life, all this other stuff as political tactics. And the thing is, that shouldn't be mentioned in any of that. That should just be, let's do the policy. Hit the policy. Don't talk about it, do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm highly agree with that, I guess.
Well, we don't legislate anymore. We have enemy camps that fire arrows at each other. Back in the day, you know, even people who were drastically opposed to each other's policies, senators and congressmen would close the door and they would legislate. They would create bills and they would come out and have a press conference, right? We don't do that anymore. When's the last time you saw some kind of bipartisan creation of legislation where everybody was happy about it? We don't, you know, our legislators are not doing their jobs, and the political process has become how, you know, I'm going to measure my success on how much I screw my opponent, as opposed to, you know, actually legislating in the name of the American people. If we had 4 senators from each side and 4 congressmen from each side, and we said, look, you can't come out of this room until you produce a freaking bill on immigration reform. You know, we'll give you some MREs and some water and a porta-john, and that's freaking it. Make this happen.
And like me as a government employee, we keep getting that stupid extension on
yeah, me too.
Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
it's getting ridiculous already.
Creates chaos in the workplace because you can only depend on like a freaking 6-week budget, and you know,
So let me lean on you guys with one word: happy. So a lot of us go, oh well, you know, especially guys, well, I serve this amount of time, I want to have this amount of money in my pocket, and then I'll be happy. But then you look back on humanity, of happiness was never part of the equation. If you look at it, if I'm a real man doing things, that means that I'm taking on pain so that my daughter doesn't have to. Right? Like I've got 5 kids. So, and my oldest is turning 18 soon, and my youngest is 10 years behind him. So I've got pretty much 7 to 17 right now, and trying to raise them to be good adults. So I'm bringing it into How can I help them better from the kitchen table, be good people for themselves and for their own household? And although I want to be happy, my job is to not be happy. My job is to help them be happy. So I'm going to go to a comedian. So Seinfeld, I watched him recently. He was talking about he has a show called Coffee and Cars with Comedians or whatnot. And he was talking to his co-host, the guy that had like screamed at his whatever. He was on the stage screaming at people years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago now. And Kramer is that dude's stage name. But they had a really good emotional talk about that. And the Kramer guy said, well, yeah, I shouldn't have lost my stuff on those people. And you know, I was just trying to have a good time. And they pulled some heartstrings and I yelled at him. And Jerry is a funny dude, but he's even meaner than I am. So I'm a nice guy. He's so straightforward and direct, and I appreciate that with certain people. I'm not one of those people most times. And but he said directly, he said, hey, you know what? It's not about, when you're on stage, it's not about you. It's about the audience. You're there not for your, because the guy was saying, well, I wish I would have enjoyed this more. Wish I would have enjoyed my time more. And I think most of us would say that too, of that I wish I would have enjoyed my time better being in the infantry and being a leader in ROTC and being a leader as a captain flying medevac missions. But then I'm guessing Rob would go, yeah, but that wasn't your fucking job. Your job was not to go to Afghanistan and have a band and play music. Your job was to lead and get the fucking job done and bring people back, which we did. So now when I look back on it, my staff has heard me say this for the past couple of years, that I do wish I would have enjoyed it better. But at the same time, I'm glad I didn't. I was going through a lot of stuff at that time, and I just wanted to lead and do things. And my other pilots, they liked me more after things happened. I proved myself in ways that other leaders didn't, and that sort of thing. And it's not a personality contest. So my point back to you guys is, how does Dylan go home tonight and look across the table to Ashley and their kids and go, you know what, there's some shit going on right now. I got to get out there. I got to be on the podcast. I got to run for school board, whatever in the hell. We have to do things. We got it so fucking easy, guys. I'm talking to you guys from thousands of miles away. How awesome is that? If I want DoorDash, I can buy anything I want. I can get chicken wings here in half an hour, or burger, or pizza, or whatever the fuck else, caviar, whatever the fuck I want. It's at my disposal. We've never had a better life, we've never had the technology to link up, but we're not. If it's not, we're talking about strategy, but if it's not us, then who else is behind us? Who else is going to do it? Because like Dylan said, and I think all of us would agree, if my house caught on fire right now, or if there was even a coyote out in the yard and my kids are out there playing, I know where my guns are and I know what's going to happen. I'm going to jump into action. Hey guys, sorry, I'm gotta go save some lives. You know, I would jump into action right then. That's just me. Not everybody's built that way, but that's what I'm really curious about. That right now people are on the border. I won't say everybody, but a lot of people have fucking guns, and something's going to happen. And I don't know. I'm not saying the guns are the answer to that and shooting somebody in the face for that, but something's going to happen. And we have to, I'm just using the border as an example, but our predecessors, our legislators aren't doing their fucking job. And the way our government is created is, if they're not doing their job, it's our duty, it's our right and responsibility to say that and get them the fuck out of there. And that's why I'm doing the podcast, to be able to do that. Am I going to run for an office? I don't know. You never know. I mean, like I was telling my staff that Sean something or other, I think he's a Green Beret, he's got less than 100 episodes out there on a podcast, and he's already interviewing like high caliber. I mean, I think, well, no, it was Don Jr. that was on his show or whatever, but like high caliber folks are on his show. And crazy. I mean, you just never know. The group, I've got a book series of, and one of my books that I'm working on is Small Teams Doing Great Things. So, very quick side note, but that adds validity to what the fuck I'm saying. So, as we're chatting about this topic, I'm thinking of that I was at a town hall here about a month or so ago, and Don Jr. was in the room, and it's here in Indianapolis, and there's Don Jr. was part of the panel, and there's another guy that is the CEO of Public Square, and the Public Square CEO said, he's a young guy who just had a kid, and he said, "Hey, before I was a dad, I would have said that I, as a CEO, want to create a company that does great things for the community and the world, from local to global, those sorts of things." And then he said, "Once I have my daughter, I just want to make things better for her." Right? Like, I've got 5 kids. I've been through that. You guys have kids, so you've been through that. And that's what it's now getting out of rhetorical language and now going into holy shit action time. So I know you guys all have, like, guns and bullets and hoses. You have all the tools, you have the techniques, technology. Now it's time to put them into action, and that may be just being more of a public, I won't say servant, but you're already serving, you're continuing to serve. This is that next echelon of your life, is to go do those things. Start a podcast. If it's not us, who the fuck else is it going to be? I'm the expert at what I know, and I stay in my lane. Dan Bongino, he's the expert at his lane. And, Tim Pool and others are out there. Sean's out there, many others. And that's my way of thinking of it. Without comms, we all know this, without communication, we are separate. We have communication, but we're not using it. Why not? What? So Dylan needs to start a podcast or whatever. Rob needs to start one. You and your brother can start a podcast talking about volcanoes.
Well, in addition to that, unless I didn't want to interrupt you, Dylan, were you getting ready to say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I would offer you that there's a 2-prong approach, right? Because I think of all these various riots that took place during COVID, should have woken up people as to how thin of a nature public security really is. So I think up until now, people have had the luxury to just be on their phones and do their own thing and fart around. And then, COVID happened, and no, there's nothing good about a global pandemic, but there are some good takeaways from it, right?
Yep.
And that's with all the respect for people who were ill and people who lost family members. I'm not being flippant about a pandemic. But as I watched my own kids, have to come back from college and do things online, and then I had a lot more time to talk to them. And as we observed all these things going on with 2 administrations dealing with COVID in different ways, and the local chaos that was ensued from lots of different reasons near St. Louis, near Portland, the craziness of creating a nation state ad hoc and then letting that go on for a while. It's just crazy, to let people take over a town and be okay with that, stuff like that. So what I've been doing myself and also telling my kids is, 1, you have to vote in local elections. I am at the epicenter of this ridiculousness here in Loudoun County, Virginia, where the school board was basically taking away the rights of students and their parents in favor of the rights of a transgender student, which is perfectly fine to be transgender. The issue is their rights do not surpass the rights of others when they commit crimes, for crying out loud, right? And so I was at the epicenter of all that, public violence and all these other things going on. School boards basically becoming, the North Korean government, spying on citizens who were members of Facebook groups, and then having surreptitious administration going on of these Facebook groups and reporting on them. This kind of crap goes on. So, and is going on. So you have to vote in local elections. You have to participate. You have to volunteer. America is built on volunteerism. And I was in a national level conference not too long ago where they were talking about how there is a crisis of gratitude right now in America. People are donating less money, donating less time. So all these classic things like the American Red Cross and all these other things that we depend on actually depend on American citizens. You have to volunteer some of your time if you want your community to run right. You have to serve on advisory boards. I'm on a couple of different advisory boards for Medical Reserve Corps and other things I'm passionate about. You have to be involved in your community. And this is what I'm teaching my kids. If you don't want to be Portland, Oregon, or if you don't want to be East St. Louis and have your small area go up in flames and be riot strewn for weeks at a time, you have to be involved. You have to support the police. You have to support the fire department. You have to support the public entities that keep you safe. And lastly, I think we just all need to be kinder to each other. Everybody needs to be kind. There's no reason to honk at somebody in the parking lot at Walmart just because they backed up and they didn't see you. I mean, let's tone it all down and be kinder to each other. Open the door for people. Say hello, say good morning, wave at people, right? If everyone were just kinder and followed some of these very simple precepts, we would be a much better nation. Now, I'll call that the positive side. On the negative side, for lack of a better term, it's actually not negative, but on the other side, during COVID, we saw our very basic supply chains threatened. The inability to get food, the inability to get basic sustenance threatened. During COVID, we saw these riots where basic public security was threatened. Your ability to walk across the street was being threatened. I accidentally got caught up in one in Washington, D.C. when I was doing something with and for my daughter, completely innocuous, just in D.C., picking her up, doing different things. And I got caught up in this stupid riot. It's absolutely ridiculous. I had to hang out at the Hilton Hotel for an extra 3 or 4 hours while this thing subsided. And, the local police and National Guard got it more under control, and it wasn't a threat, to people's well-being. So with that in mind, I think people need to freaking wake up, and they need to be a little bit better emergency prepared. Can you shelter in place in your own home for 3 days? Do you have enough food? Do you have enough water? Do you have an emergency communication plan with your family? If you don't, if your cell phone battery goes dead, what is your PACE plan? Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency on communicating with people. I don't consider myself a prepper, although there's lots of things we can learn from those people. I don't think we have to go live in a missile silo and have 6 months worth of food and, not talk to each other and stuff like that. That's not the point. The point is, America, especially if we see the elections coming up, if they're going the way that they kind of look like they're going to go with this rematch, oh my gosh, right? This could be a whole different America we haven't seen since the late 60s, or God forbid, the 1860s.
Jeez, right.
And I'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, it's funny that you were talking about the Virginia stuff. I listen to Michael Berry every morning, and he covered that. And like you said, he also said the change of America starts at the local level. Vote locally. Your school board, your congressman, the sheriff. I mean, I don't care what it is. Just local voting is where the change comes from. And but that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dylan, people weren't paying attention to the school board because, who cares, right? If you don't have kids in school, why am I going to vote for the school board? That's what everybody says. And then without anybody looking, these near communist North Korean weirdos started to dominate the school board. And all of a sudden, all these decisions are being made about what people can read, what people can do, all these religious restrictions, taking down the flag in the classroom, not being able to say the Pledge of Allegiance, all this basic stuff. And then all of a sudden you're like, how do we get here? How did this happen? Well, it's because nobody was voting for the school board, or, those people who are really radicalized and feel about these different ways were getting their candidates. And then all of a sudden we're going to tell you what to do because we're the school board and you can't get rid of us. Well, Loudoun County showed them because we freaking did get rid of them. Right. Yep. And they did send that superintendent to jail.
Oh, wow.
Right. And his assistant, right, who were lying to the parents and who were lying to the police. Right. But that's the level of extrication that it required after all these people got in power.
Yeah. And I just want to go on for the record. I'm neither Republican or Democratic. I consider myself a libertarian. I live by, like Albert has on his hat over there, don't tread on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the motto of my life. And I try to instill that in my kids and hope they choose correctly in the future when they're able to vote. And I pray they choose correctly. And not only because, yes, I probably lean a little bit more to the right. Obviously, I got a Second Amendment shirt on right now. But that doesn't make me a Republican or a Democrat. And I believe at this time we probably need to cut out the two-party system and come together, honestly.
Well, both parties have wonderful moderate candidates, and that's what we need to elect, right? From both parties, whichever party you vote for, people who are commonsensical, people who are thinking about America first, people that are trying to help out the general citizenry. Unfortunately, both parties have these radical wings, and people have a tendency to drift in these radical directions. And that's a huge mistake, right? We all need to be voting moderate, and, people who want to cooperate, get together, pass legislation, and do the right thing.
Yep. I will say this podcast turned completely different from the beginning. I didn't expect it to get this pretty deep, but it shows you, us veterans, we think on a different level, honestly, and where our conversations lead. Because, yeah. Anyways.
Well, like Trump announced that not too long ago that he wants to build new cities. We haven't built a new city in the longest time, and what a great way to get veterans part of the planning and the building and all that kind of stuff, and maybe give everybody a little bit more room to breathe. I think going back to Rob's point of do something kind every day, and it's going to stack up. Growing up in Texas, as you're driving, you're got the 2-finger wave and all that kind of stuff. And I grew up riding motorcycles too, so you're low waving and stuff at people. And when I first moved to Indiana, people waved at each other. And I think since post-COVID, everybody just started going, well, everybody's going to sneeze on me and give me the death booger, and nobody's being nice to each other anymore. And we're still stuck in that. And that's what maybe some elites above us are wanting, but how do we win? We win by being more like bees as opposed to like flies. Be communal. Every ecosystem needs bees and flies, but bees are communal, want to work together. Flies just eat shit and die 6 weeks later. So they all have a value, but if we can be around other bees and go, okay, let's wave. Yes, let's build. Yes, let's have good security and have people who aren't violent but know how to fucking what's that guy's name from Canada? He says, I want you to be a monster. You need to be a monster, but know how to control it.
Yep.
That's what us guys are. I don't want to be violent, but I sure as fuck will. I don't want to throw my own child out a window, but if my house is on fire, see ya. And I didn't throw a kid out the window, but I put a fire out in my own house a couple years ago, and I know I do this. So I know because I've been tested with my own house being on fucking fire, and I jumped into action and got it taken care of. And we're still here and all that stuff. If a neighbor hadn't have jumped the fence and come over and told me another 10 seconds, and the whole house would have gone up in flames. So it took those linkages of somebody having the fucking guts to go, hey, I see something, I'm going to say something. That makes a difference. I didn't have a decision point. I was on the front porch in the back of my house is catching on fire. I had no fucking reference point. I'm talking to another neighbor, and a guy runs around my house, and it's on video. We got one of those Ring cameras. Runs around the house, and he goes, hey, your house is on fire. And I remember my neighbor goes, what? And my wife goes, what? Asking questions. Are you serious? My wife says. And I haul ass around the house, and I go instantly into mode. Thank goodness the hose was there. Liam was downstairs and gets pulled up, and my wife is grabbing kittens and all this kind of stuff. But like, if you see something, say something and get fucking something done. I want to be part of good things. I don't want to be part of, wow, that got bad, didn't it? Whose fault was it? Whose fault was that? I don't want that. I want to know that the buck stops with me. I saw it, I did something, and I made it better.
Albert, as a certified emergency manager who works in this space, I would like to channel your monsterness for anyone listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, most communities have community emergency response teams, CERTs. They get a lot of training from the police and the fire department on how to do the things you just mentioned, right? How to help people. I mean, we take our first aid training for granted as veterans, you know, how to stop bleeding, how to clear an obstructed airway, all these kinds of things. On your CERT team, you can learn how to do that, because who knows when we're going to need to have those skills in our neighborhoods, right? Like you experienced. Mm-hmm. And also online right now, if you will, you can just Google Until Help Arrives. That is a course offered by the Department of Homeland Security, meant for every citizen in America to learn about what are some basic things I can do, not just in terrorism, but if there's a motorcycle accident in front of me, how can I help this person? How can I be the first link in the chain of survival? So community emergency response teams and Until Help Arrives training are a great way to channel your monsterness. Over.
Yep. And that was Jordan Peterson who said that, by the way. I was like, Canadian guy, Jordan Peterson. Should be a monster.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely. Because there's just too many fuck you looky-loos that my wife knows this, that if there's any kind of house fire in the neighborhood, she's like, she'll freak out because she's like, I know Albert's going to run in that motherfucker. If there's a car wreck, like, it's crazy. I take my kids to school every morning, pick them up every day. And on my way to school not too long ago, this was before the time change, so it was sunnier out. And we're on Eastern time, but in Indiana. So we're driving, normal route, 30 miles an hour, 34, 35 miles an hour. And I'm in my newer Jeep, and we pass something, and all of a sudden I hear a noise. I've got a convertible top, and so it's weird. You can hear a lot of noise. But I heard something that sounded pretty monstrous, and I looked up in my rear view, and I see a car or a truck rolling and up on its side, and I was like, holy shit. And thankfully, I just passed the accident, and so thankfully I got a Jeep, so I calmly pulled off to the side of the road, got into the ditch, and drove back to where the guy was, and thankfully also there's cops were already showing up because they were pretty close by. But I got out, and the truck was on its side, and there's this guy in there like this because the truck's on his side, so he's like in the windshield, and it's not hot or cold, it's not rainy and all that. The airbag had gone off, so he was just kind of in there, hunkered in there. And I was like, well, I'm not going to crash you out of this thing. You okay? You okay? We couldn't hear each other very well. His windows were up and everything. But I said, hey, are you all right? Yeah. And I said, I know you can't see this, but there's a cop right there, and I hear other sirens coming. So I was like, I'm just going to sit here. If you need out, I will break you out. I had my gun with me. I have a knife that has a punch on it. So I was like, if you need out, I will get you out. But there's a cop right here. So the cop came over and talked to him for a second, and you're okay. Okay, fine. The cop walks off. All I did was stand there, and I told him, I said, I'm going to stay here. The cops, I said, I can hear them. They're right there. There's another one over there. They'll be here in like 2 minutes. And he's like, okay, yeah, fine, thanks. I don't know the guy's name. I didn't ask it, but like, we didn't have time, a lot of moving parts, but he couldn't see that he was surrounded by help, even because he's in his own little world of this is all he's got for a viewfinder. But he knew that I was there to communicate with him and help him out of there if I needed to. And that's all people really want, is a little bit of help.
Tremendous act of kindness on your part. And because most people are filming the damn thing as opposed to helping somebody bleeding out, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh shit, I left my phone in the car. Because I was like, if I need to call anybody, but thankfully the cops were there. So I was like, well, we got comms. There's a cop here who was like off duty, and he had announced himself that way. Hey, I'm off duty, so this isn't my sector, but I can get in contact with these other people, and they're going to come over here and get this guy out. But yeah, it's just a fucking small world. Just be kind. That's all you got to do. And that's what I tell my kids all the time. Do something nice every day, and it stacks up. And it not only stacks up for you to look back on, but other people to look back on and value too. Of, well, shit, Dylan and I have worked together to deliver over $160 million to veterans. Who else says that? Can anybody else say that? Nobody else does. So nobody else can. I delivered over 9 billion, and I think it was the VFW that said that they had helped with, I don't know, let me see what numbers they throw out there. Very similar number, like 3 billion or something a year, or whatever it fucking is. And they said over years of time. Well, I've helped a lot more than that, and just with my stick-to-itiveness and kindness. And but yeah, good shit. I know we're coming up on our 2-hour mark, so we can pivot anytime, but go ahead.
On that note, Albert, I would encourage folks that are talking to you and Dylan to not hesitate, right? To not wait. I waited way too many years, happy with the 40%. I'm not going to go backwards and calculate the money that I should have gotten in the last 7 years. That I don't think that's an actual helpful thing to do. I'm just happy that I finally talked to you guys, and I would just encourage all veterans to get on the stick. Don't wait. Don't do it tomorrow. Do it today. Think about yourself. If you're not worried about yourself, think about your family. Think about others that love you and that you love them. And I'll leave one last story. Dylan was talking about veterans who think, well, I wasn't blown up, so I've got all my limbs. I don't deserve this money, or I'm not really that bad or anything. I will tell you guys that I have a neighbor who didn't even go to his VA appointment when he retired many years ago and has zero, right? Because he feels like, no, it's not right. So many guys, and just calculate it all, right? Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, all these guys that got hurt. I never really got hurt, but he's older than me, and I see that he has back problems. I'm like, you should start the VA process. No, I wasn't hurt in combat. I'm okay. And so I'm just really pleading with every single veteran out there, go to your appointments, get your stuff done, and then as quickly as possible, talk to Albert, Dylan, and gang, and everybody in the Fulfilled Veteran Project, so they will do right by you. Over.
Yeah, I call it being selfish. This is your time to be selfish. Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, or beyond, be selfish. It's bizarre and divine, I guess you'd say, that so many of my clients get on my calendar on or really close to their birthday. It's so many. I only talk to like 4 or 5 people per day. It's usually 1 or 2 a day, every single Monday through Friday. That's how divine that interaction is and engagement is, that you have to be selfish, because if it's not for, if you're not going to take care of yourself, who the fuck else is?
Yeah.
Like, I'm the best at what I do. My wife doesn't know anything about this stuff. So she's not a veteran. She didn't know me when I was in service. So she doesn't understand language lingo, all the turmoil that we've been through. Now, she's been through a lot of shit with me, with the ex-wife and all that kind of stuff. But like, fuck, man, there's plenty of stories. But be selfish. And like Rob said, sometimes looking backwards is a bit of a sting. But because I do have clients that are in their 20s, and I tell them too, I'm like, man, my older guys are going to go, good on you. Good on you for taking care of yourself now at 25, 27, 28, 30, whatever. And you're going to be a hell of a lot better off and in control of your life and livelihood from here on out. So good on you. And so I do appreciate Rob for mentioning that. And that's what we do here. Dylan, I'll turn it over to you for a couple of seconds for anything else you got as we're closing up.
Well, I suck at intros and I suck at goodbyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and end on a quote by George Orwell. It's people sleep peacefully in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. So a little bit conversation that we had a little while ago, it kind of reflected to that. So
it's a fair statement. Good stuff. Well, I appreciate you guys. This was awesome. Great way to start off episode 1. I know we did bounce around quite a bit for some other things, and we're going to do this every Friday, record this about an hour, 2 hours, if not more. And if anybody out there is interested or know that their family is, please have them contact me. We do now have a page on my website where they can put an inquiry in if they want to participate in this, but they can find my email address that's out there, albert@thefulfilledveteranproject.com. You can find my website, thefulfilledveteranproject.com. That's been there the whole time in your face. So, but yeah, I appreciate you guys being here today, and talk to you guys next week and beyond. Thanks, guys, for being here. We'll talk again soon.
All right.